This intro is going to be a bit of a mess. As of writing and recording, I still have not seen Transformers 1. I hear it's great, but to be honest, the fan response and subsequent harassment campaigns are making it tough to ever want to watch it at this point. Not the movie's fault, to be sure, but the whole ordeal has put kind of a stink on it for me, you know? Also, this is Prime Changer Bumblebee, not the Studio Series version, which isn't out yet as of writing and recording anyway, because from what I've seen of the Studio Series iteration, I actually prefer this. Okay, enough digging my own proverbial grave, let's get into it. I legitimately really like this look for B. He's certainly recognizable from the yellow and black color scheme, or in this case it's more of a, I guess, metallic yellow and dark gunmetal. But there's something about the rest of him that also looks the part. Mostly curves with a few straight lines, sort of like he's a sweet boy who wants to look tough, I suppose. For some reason, I really dig these shoulder wheel semi-orbs, and while the chest looks like even more of a face than the bottom of the original Super X, props to anyone who knows where that's from, it still looks cool and breaks up the yellow nicely. And of course, you can slide part of the chest off to reveal Bumblebee's handleless matrix, T-Cog. It's painted up in silver, metallic, light blue, and it looks pretty nice for something that's going to spend the rest of this figure's life covered up. Now, yes, there are big gaps in the sides of the legs. I understand why people would find them unsightly. But this is also a Sub-Deluxe price-pointed figure with a leg transformation that needs that space for the thighs in vehicle mode. I'm not saying people are wrong for disliking them, but I do think that within the context of what this toy is, it's silly to be mad about it. I'm sure as heck not, anyway. Though I do think the head does most of the work here. The head may not have the expected Bumblebee horns, or I guess their antenna now, but there are some little nubs at the top that kind of sorta convey that idea. And while they're not strictly a bee thing, I also like the painted gunmetal vents along the sides of the face. Of course, the large single color, in this case silver, face being surrounded by a rounded yellow-ish helmet, that's what really screams Bumblebee to me, along with those baby blues. I'd have really liked a battle mask option because from what I've seen in the trailers, this bee's mask in particular looks really cool. But seeing as this is a prime changer and thus sits in what I think is a budget strata that's slightly below deluxe, I get why it's not a thing with this figure in particular. It still would have been nice though. Now for Prime Changer B's articulation, it is pretty decent. The head is on a ball joint. Unfortunately, it can't look down any further than this. Like, it just looks straight. That kind of stinks, but it can look up a bit. Can also tilt side to side a bit and can, of course, rotate around. I just wish it could look down a little bit. The shoulders are on these giant ball joints, so you can go all the way around, can go out to almost 90. You get basically butterfly motion because of the ball joint range, but then you also have these hinges that are used for transformation that you can use for additional butterfly motion, so that's pretty cool. 90-degree elbows. There's a big ball joint in here for the transformation that allows them to rotate, but you can also kind of angle the arms in. So you could give him like this look if you wanted to. I feel like articulation-wise that does have uses. Got a waist rotation that goes all the way around and not impeded by anything. Ball jointed hips that can go forward past 90, back to about 90 before things start hitting into the little panel on the back. Out to 90. Whoop. Okay, maybe not out to 90. I think that popped it off the ball joint. So out to there, if you go out further than that, then it pops it off the ball joints. So not quite 90, but still not bad. And a tiny bit of wiggle that could be used as like a thigh swivel. You get actual thigh swivels, and then a knee that bends to, I'd say that's 90. Though the thighs are really, really small, so it's one of those, like, it doesn't seem to accomplish a whole lot when you bend the knee. Also, for some reason, I think just because of the transformation, the knee kind of clicks into a straight position, and then it unclicks. So, like, I mean, it's fine. It doesn't, I think, like, that tiny degree that you miss because of the clicking doesn't matter. It's just a thing the knee does. Also, I'm now noticing there's some paint slop on the thigh there, or maybe scratching, I can't quite tell. No, this is yellow plastics, that's paint slop. Alright, well, whatever. If you want, you can use this transformation bit as like a angling, you can use it to like angle the leg slightly, or a lot to look really weird. And then the feet, you there is a pivot here, but it's not actually useful for articulation. Like, basically it's for the transformation where this comes forward and then tilts in. So that's all that wiggle is for. When you're in this position, you're not getting any wiggle. Like, once it comes down, it's not moving. But you can move the foot forward, and it does actually click in place. If you push up enough, it'll go up and then kind of thunk in place, and that locks everything in. So, I don't know. I like that it locks in. And it's an A stance, so yeah, he doesn't have ankle tilts, but I cannot work up the enthusiasm to care. You may have seen this when we were doing articulation, but tucked along the back is Bee's weapon cluster, made up of both a blaster fist and wrist knife. And they just tab into the 2 slots right here. Both accessories are fine for what they are, and I can appreciate how each one got a bit of paint, but I'm still not all that enthusiastic about them. The blaster uses this little peg here to cover up the fist, just plugs right in, and it blends in with the forearm well. But it's kind of a pain to remove. If you peg it in all the way, then it just doesn't want to come out as easily as I would like. Also, because of the way this is designed, you can only use it on the left arm. You can't peg it into the right because the right has these tabs here that get in the way of this piece. It stinks that it's just the one side that you can use it on. The knife looks really good. It's maybe a little short, but because of how it combines with the blaster for storage, there's this unsightly tab sticking straight up in the front. And like the blaster, it's arm specific, so you can't put it on this arm because this arm doesn't have the tabs. So you just tab this over. There are these slots on the inside here that tab over the forearm, and it goes in, or rather this big slot here goes over the forearm, and it tabs in, and like it integrates well here, but this tab, I hate this tab, and that tab doesn't need to be there. I'll get into it in a minute, but like that just sucks. And like this would be a cool look for Bumblebee if this giant tab wasn't there, and like at least this tab is pointing down so you don't see it as much. Another thing you can do is if you use this over here, you could just keep the blaster and knife, sword, whatever, tab together and just give him like a single blaster knife combo weapon, which is usually what I do because that at least keeps the unsightly tabs pointed towards the back. But I don't like how they did this. And to be honest, I feel like I would have preferred getting a knife for both arms rather than this combo. But this is what we got. What's kind of interesting is just how big Prime Changer Bumblebee is. And not just because he's a bit taller than your average modern deluxe either. I know this has been pointed out before, but it's still funny to see him next to Prime Changer Orion Prime, or Optimus Pax, whatever. He's not only very slightly taller, but also looks much bulkier. He's practically like a bruiser standing next to the traditionally much larger boy. I didn't have this in the script, but I just wanted to have him with some other Bumblebees that I've got so you can see again that like as a deluxe, he's pretty big. Way bigger than Legacy Animated Bumblebee. Just about as tall as Reactivate Bee, who is gigantic for a Bumblebee, like especially a deluxe Bumblebee. And is much smaller next to Metamorphic Universe BTT-01, which just came in right before I started filming. I have things to say about this. I will get to it eventually. It might even be the next video I make. I don't know. I'm still deciding on that, but we're focusing on him for now. But just in case anyone's wondering, that's what this is. It's not something I care about that much since I'm not all that big on scale or have a TF1 shelf or anything like that. But it is still kind of weird how big this guy is. One thing real quick I forgot to go over, blast effect compatibility. It technically has some. It's a very, very shallow fit, so it's easy to get knocked out of place, but that is a roughly 5mm hole, so blast effect can plug in, kind of, and it holds. Now, before we transform this bee into a bee-mobile, gotta plug the Patreon/Coffee. Got links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Support is always appreciated, though not necessary. Also, if you want to do support without the money thing, you can always like, comment, share, subscribe. Typical YouTube stuff is pretty helpful. Alright, to transform this guy, to start, we are going to do the head thing. So just rotate his head 180 degrees, pop this whole assembly back, flip this back, and going into robot mode, what happens is when you push this forward, it actually clicks. So you want to keep pushing until it gives a little snap, and that'll lock it in place. But rotate this back, and then there's this little semicircle thing on the back of the head that'll go over this little plug there. And that will get that situated, then you just close this back up. And now he can do the thing. I think this was the thing, or was it just Optimus that did this? I don't remember. Because I only saw like a couple of the trailers one time each. Anyway, before I forget, I'm going to rotate the forearms around 180 degrees. Also going to rotate the waist 180 degrees. Now the torso, it kind of pulls forward, it plugs in down here. So this pulls forward, swings up, and will tab in up here. And then this little tummy panel swings down and plugs in down here. We can shift these transformation joints in, and there are these big chunky tabs here that go into these openings on the inside of the shoulders. So those tab in like that. And again, shift this up and in, tab that in, and then the fists, the tab on the back of the right fist will go into a slot on the back of the left fist. And that will lock the hands together. That just looks kind of funny. For the last little bit of it, very simple. You want to untab and accordion up the legs. Just untab and swing up. And these will come together, and basically there is a little peg here that goes into a little peg hole on the inside here. There's a tab on the inside of the leg here that goes into one of the slots on the side of the thigh. I forget which one. And the fists, if you notice, they're not flat on the bottom. There's like this little bit that's just a little bit shallower than up here. You're going to want this yellow angled piece to go over that part of the fist. So you just bring it all together, and it should tab in, and can do it on the other side too. It helps to have the leverage on both sides. So shift this up and around, make sure everything is lined up with those pegs, and then just give it a squeeze, and everything should tab in just fine, nice and secure. Now the feet will flip up and then rotate in, flip up, rotate in, and this little panel on the back accordions up. And for me, what I find works best to get this into place is to rotate it up like this when it's in a higher position, and that gives you a little bit more room to kind of slide this back and angle it so that it can go over everything else. It's kind of tricky to get things moving on this piece, but you do that, you push it down, and it should tab in back here, go over the little tabs on the feet, and that's it. There we have Transformers 1 Prime Changer Bees, this mode. So Prime Changer Bees transformation isn't particularly complicated, but I was a little surprised at first by how nuanced it can be. Not necessarily fiddly, but there are certain moments that end up being much trickier to pull off if you don't do them at just the right time or just the right angle. Once you figure out the best order of operations, it's pretty smooth though, and rather clever. So okay, first of all, I do like this vehicle mode. It's a departure to be sure, but I think it's a neat and sleek looking thing that kind of reminds me of some of those 2015 flying cars from the second Back to the Future. I also like how smooth and flat it is in profile, and the way the back forks adds a bit of extra visual interest to the silhouette. What I'm less fond of is how bland the colors look here. To be clear, the gunmetal peeking through the sides looks nice and adds a neat layered effect, and the black along the top is also cool. And I wouldn't call it sparse necessarily, but just a little bit more color breakup would go a long way. Maybe something on the wheels so they don't blend into everything else quite so much, and a little bit more color in the vast expanse of absolutely nothing towards the back. I think that's all it really needs. That Repro label set definitely looks like it'll help, but I'm hesitant to order it because it's a 2-pack with stickers for Sentinel Prime, and I don't own or want Sentinel. I do love the I am so done with this nonsense squish face on the front though. That's great. And a mood. In this mode, the blaster and knife congeal together to peg into the top, though you can attach them separately if you want. And, well, that sure is some weapon storage. There's enough room on the back underside that I feel like they could have pegged in and hidden more effectively here, but that's not where they go. Oh well. Now, I touched on this before, but what really bugs me about all of this weapon storage is just how unnecessary this makes the tab on the knife. The idea is to peg the knife into the blaster, then you get 2 tabs that solidify the weapons up top. But you could easily get by with just 1 tab on the blaster. If I take this off, like, okay, you can plug that in on its own, or you can plug the blaster in on its own. But like, if the blaster's plugged in on its own, then this could just tab in, like, it doesn't need that second peg. Maybe it's meant to be a solidity thing to better protect against accidental breakage, but the blaster's tab is chunky enough that I think it would still be fine. But instead, we get an unnecessary tab on the worst part of the knife so that it looks bad in robot mode, just so that it can do this, and it can do this without the tab. Despite the somewhat beastly robot mode in comparison to the average Deluxe, Prime Changer B, the alt mode is actually rather small looking, which I guess is a testament to how well everything compacts down. Aside from the very ends of the tail section poking out, this vehicle looks significantly teeny next to our requisite modern Deluxe, in this case Burnout. I guess I just think it's neat how much bigger the robot ends up looking. It's kind of funny, I actually had my eyes on Prime Changer Bumblebee for a couple of months, but never managed to find one in stores because our local distribution is awful. I mean, really awful. I did eventually put him on a couple of my wish lists, but by then it was close to the end of the year, so I held off on buying one for myself just because, I didn't want to risk someone buying him for me as a gift. Which Diana did! So now I have him, and honestly, I actually like him even more than I was expecting to. He's not necessarily the best Bumblebee figure I own, or my favorite, even ignoring my requisite G1 Bumblebee, which I've had with me for almost 40 years cop-out, but he is a very good and fun Bumblebee that I'm very happy to own. If you can look past the disappointing weaponry and calf chasms, you might also end up feeling the same. Or not, I don't know. We all have our own unique likes and dislikes, but this is pretty neat for what it is, to me. Anyway, that's enough about what I think. What do you all think of Prime Changer Bumblebee? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back to say more words about toys at you next time.